On April 19, 1775, 700 redcoats are on the march to Concord to seize the rebellious Massachusetts militia's stockpile of weapons and gunpowder. Along the way, they encounter about 80 militiamen on Lexington Common watching them pass by, but the redcoats stop to confront them. Nobody knows who fired the first shot heard round the world, but the redcoats opened fire, killing 8 militiamen, which set the Patriots on the road to liberty. Over the next 2 years, the Patriots will trudge along this road that's fraught with dangers within.
It became a very tense situation between those who supported the cause of liberty and those who supported loyalty to the king, to the point where it really became a civil war in many ways.
And the road was littered with defeats and retreats when this fledgling nation was at its most vulnerable as the Patriots struggle against the British Crown and its mighty army and Royal Navy in their fight for liberty. As the redcoats continue their march to Concord, word spread like wildfire, and militias and Minutemen raced from all over Massachusetts to defend Concord and Lexington and avenge their fallen brothers. The militias attacked the redcoats posted at Northbridge, forcing the British soldiers to retreat. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith, in charge of the British raid, sends some of his grenadiers to rescue the beleaguered redcoats at Northbridge and orders his troops to march back to Boston. The militias and Minutemen keep arriving and have set up a gauntlet along the route to Boston to harass the redcoats, attacking them from all sides and causing many British casualties.
Our men had very few opportunities of getting good shots at the rebels, as they hardly ever fired but under cover of a stone wall, from behind a tree or out of a house, and the moment they had fired, they lay down out of sight until they had loaded again.
The battles of Lexington and Concord may have ignited the American Revolutionary War in 1775, but this confrontation between many of the colonists and the King's troops was the culmination of over a decade of grievances the colonists endured.
We can really go back all the way to the Stamp Act in 1765. The Stamp Act taxed people directly in their pocketbooks for everything they needed: licenses, stamps, newspapers, and that was really the beginning of it.
Declaring no taxation without representation, riots broke out as colonists took to the streets to protest the Stamp Act, demanding that the British Parliament repeal it, which they did. But it was the calm before the storm, because Parliament replaced the Stamp Act with the Townshend Acts in 1767 that taxed imported goods to raise revenue for the Crown. This enraged the colonists and protests erupted again. Then came the Tea Act in 1773 that inflamed the Sons of Liberty, who organized the Boston Tea Party in December 1773 and dumped tons of tea into Boston Harbor. In retaliation, Parliament passed the Coercive Acts in March 1774, which the colonists called intolerable. These acts closed the port of Boston, imposed martial law, ended self-government, and enacted the new Quartering Act.
It became an occupation of their land. That's how it was viewed by the colonists. No longer were they under the protection of the Crown, but they were under the occupation of the Crown.
But not all colonists wanted to break away.
The Patriots called Loyalists Tories. It was not meant as a compliment. Tory and Whig were political parties at the time. The Loyalists referred to their enemies as the Whigs or the rebels, never as patriots, of course.
There were fractions within families. There were factions within social groups and communities, between those who supported liberty and those who still supported the king, to the point of sometimes outward violence, one group towards the other.
Even before hostilities had commenced, tarring and feathering of loyalists, or another most unhappy torture called riding the rail, were used against loyalists for speaking their mind.
Reinforced by many New England militias following the battles of Lexington and Concord, over 15,000 Patriot soldiers dug in and laid siege to the city of Boston. When news reached Philadelphia, the Second Continental Congress was convened on May 10, 1775. After much discussion, the delegates voted to reorganize the New England militias into the Continental Army.
in colonial times, a standing army was seen as a threat to the populace. And this was actually one of the things that drew a lot of friction between the colonists and the mother country.
The delegates unanimously appointed George Washington as Commander-in-Chief on June 15, 1775. I feel great distress from a consciousness that my abilities and military experience may not be equal to the extensive and important trust. However, as the Congress desire it, I will enter upon the momentous duty and exert every power I possess in their service and for the support of the glorious cause.